Okay, so start that now. All right.
Oh, that's microphone.
So thank you so much for joining us tonight for School Anxiety Tips for Helping Your Child Navigate the Return, co-sponsored by Seek Institute and NAMI Central Texas. I am Dr. Vanessa Rodriguez, the Director of Operations for Seek Institute and the moderator for tonight's discussion. So what we're hoping to do is to create a space for discussion and questions around this important topic. It's been a difficult time for everyone during this pandemic, especially for children. With the beginning of the school year and a return to in-person learning for many, the typical back-to-school worries that arise may even be higher right now. Now, during this hour, our panelists are going to speak as to how children experience anxiety, how to help them cope, and how to help support kids as they return to classes. Many of you tonight provided questions for our panelists, and we'll try to address them as many as possible tonight. We're also going to provide everyone a back-to-school toolkit for parents with tips and worksheets after the presentation. And after the panel, we will keep the meeting open to talk about the upcoming fall return of our parent support group, Real Talk for Parents. Now I have the pleasure of introducing our panelists for tonight. Starting with Elizabeth Dickey. She is currently completing her master's in counseling at Texas State University. She has a passion for working with children, adults, parents, and educators. She has worked in the education field for over 20 years and has extensive experience working with individuals with disabilities. Elizabeth has a person-centered, strengths-based focus and believes in helping clients find solutions within themselves. Rebecca Farrell is a program coordinator for youth and family programs at NAMI Central Texas. She has worked extensively with children, adolescents, and families in navigating systems they are involved with as they address mental health, wellness, and recovery. Wendy Kozlowski has worked in the mental health field in varying capacities since 2004. She's currently a director at Pathlight Mood and Anxiety Center in Round Rock, which is a PHP IOP level of care that serves adolescents and adults with primary mood, anxiety, and trauma-related diagnoses. Tanya Parker has been working with families for over 30 years in various capacities. Her previous experience includes being a parenting specialist, runway and homeless advocate, and subject matter expert for trauma-informed care, suicide prevention, and juvenile justice for the state of Texas. She's currently the Family and Community Program Coordinator for NAMI Central Texas, but is here today as the mother of a child who struggles with anxiety, OCD, and was recently diagnosed as bipolar. And Monica Reyes is the mother of 2 adult sons living with a mental health challenge. She has been a certified family partner with Travis County Office of Children's Services for 17 years. She provides advocacy, emotional support, mental health education, community linkage, and crisis support for parents and caregivers using the wraparound process and systems of care philosophy. She's a NAMI basics teacher for NAMI Central Texas and an IOOV presenter. Thank you all for being here tonight. So we are going to start our panel with a discussion that's centered around the 2 videos that we posted on social media and with the invitation confirmation. The videos were Your Brain on Anxiety with our very own panelist, Wendy Kozlowski, and Managing Back to School Anxiety. In Your Brain on Anxiety, Wendy spoke about how anxiety looks different in children and adults, what happens in your body and our brain when we feel anxious, and what we can do to manage that. And in the other video, the panelists Megan Butler and Wanda Montemayor discussed active strategies to manage the unexpected and prolonged stress children may feel as school begins again. So in thinking about these videos, what were some of the thoughts that you all had in reviewing it and thinking about how kids' current return after a majority of them were in virtual learning, how that will be for them this year as opposed to previous years.
Well, I'll just jump in and say hi, everyone, and thank you for being with us. This is a really important topic, so I appreciate all of you taking time to learn and share. So for me, I think it's really important to just understand that anxiety looks very different as the children age developmentally. And so for my son, being younger, it was stomach aches and headaches and different things. And then it was kind of just being agitated. And then as a teenager, it looked completely different. And so I just think it's just very important to understand that it may look one way at 5 and very different at 9 and even more different at 15. And then my second point is, as a parent, each one of you need to take care of yourselves. So I want to make sure that we spend some time talking about that tonight. But those are my 2 basic takeaways.
One of the thoughts that I had in just thinking about this presentation, again, it's a presentation I've given in varying capacities over the years. I think this year actually will allow us to connect with our children and our children's anxieties in a different way than we have before, right? In my presentation, I talked about the concept of paper tigers, and a lot of times for us as parents, our children's perceived worries don't, again, the idea is that they're a paper tiger, right? We can just crumple them up, throw it away. They're not a real threat to us as adults, even though they're very real for our children and adolescents. And that can create a disconnect and have us be seen as a threat to our children and adolescents. But I think this year is going to be very different, and last year as well. I think a lot of us as parents and support people have some real fears around the return to school as well. And that could be very connecting. And if we attune to that intentionally, could present different things for us this year, different levels of connection. So.
In regards to school anxiety, I just wanted to share, and I'm going to put it in the link too. Those familiar with Dr. Bruce Perry in Houston, recently AISD sponsored him as a speaker, and what he does a lot with trauma in the neurosequential model, a lot about the ACEs. And what he said is it's going to take us professionals, family members, and students at least 2.5 years to get back to where we were even before COVID. And he says that to say, we need to take a deep breath. We need to accept each other where we are right now. We need to give each other grace and time. And that includes teachers, administrators, and students, and families, and parents, and social workers, and advocates. So we're just going to have to take a step back and take a deep breath and support each other with a lot of grace. There's going to be anxiety from everyone. There's going to be overload and work and emotional exhaustion from everyone. And so the bottom line basically is to take a deep breath and take one step at a time and support each other. So.
Yeah, just to second that, I think that this is an incredible opportunity in a lot of ways, because we're all saying we're anxious. This is hard. This is really, really hard. And so we're having this collective experience, and we have the opportunity to absolutely know that there's no one we're talking to that hasn't experienced this in some way. And so I think being a parent is the hardest job on earth any day of the week. No pandemic, perfect world, it's hard. So I think just, really seconding, really thinking about how you're caring for yourself so that you can care for your family members and really be present for your children. It doesn't work if we don't start with ourselves. And I think that's just, it's a great model for your kids to see you caring for yourself and being open about your feelings.
I just want to validate that you all are doing that by being here. It's just small steps, not these big giant answers.
And I also think as parents, as you help navigate your child's anxiety and your own anxiety about returning to school and going back to normalcy, that it's okay to give yourself permission to not always have the answers. Um, and that being able to openly communicate with your child in an age appropriate, developmentally appropriate way is fine, because you're teaching your child or children that we don't always have the answers. Adults don't always have the answers, but we can find the answers from other people who are in our support systems.
So what I'd like to do now is to begin to ask the panel some of the questions that we've received over the past few weeks. And one of the first ones that we have here is what resources are available for students and their families to prepare before school and after the year starts?
I think one of the main resources that we tap into in the school is the administration. The biggest resource is our principals, and it's our counselors, and it's our, I work with a lot of kids in the special ed department. So there's parent support specialists at the schools. There's licensed mental health professionals at the schools. And there's a lot of social workers at the schools. So specifically in regards to school resources, our schools have a lot of resources within them. I only work in Travis County, so I can only speak to what I've experienced over the 17 years. But our schools have a lot of resources, especially during COVID. So those are the resources that I would start with if I were working with a particular family.
And Monica, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I think it's really important as a parent. You know, we always think we have to have a plan and be 100% ready. And it's okay not to be, but because you all are here, you're thinking about it. And so I think there's professionals that can help you at the schools. So take a look at the website, see if there are parenting specialists, find out who your connections are there. But for me, I go more grassroots, where I'm like, who is in my life right now that can be supportive, and who does my child think is a support for them at the school or in the community or in my family. And so for me, I call it like building your panel or your tribe. Who does my child connect with at home? Besides me, is there somebody that they really connect with? And who do they really connect with at the school? For my son, it was the nurse. And then who supports me? And then kind of start that conversation. This is gonna, probably be a rough transition, and who do we need to go to? And then just start looking. We've created this wonderful toolkit that you'll get that has all kinds of information. So just take a look at it and pick the one thing that you think is going to work the best and work on that. And so just one little step at a time. But I think there's a lot of things that you can start now. And just by saying, you know what, this feels a little overwhelming, and so I'm going to ask for help. And then I'm going to ask my child who they want to talk to for help.
And I also think that in the process of preparing for school, we tend to, or in anything in life, we tend to forget to have fun. And so it's important about that self-care piece too, is to make sure that you incorporate having fun as a family. So it's not all about just getting ready for school, and being able to direct your energy into fun things as well to help offset some of the anxiety that is being experienced.
Yeah, I think some examples of that fun stuff can be, right, like that little lunch snack that goes in their box, or let's all go play at the school playground, on a day before school starts. You're creating an exposure to coming up to the school building. You're building in consistency and routine, and again, you're having fun. So these things don't have to be big things that encourage that. They say when you have a small child and you're helping them get on an airplane for the first time, right? You use toys that they've never played with before. Same concept, right?
Yeah, I think just to continue that idea, really thinking about how you can interact with the school before school gets started. A lot of schools are having some kind of event or some type of welcoming event. So just getting some of that information, thinking about the questions you have, but just also getting physically around that space for kids that haven't been there for a year and a half or a year, or kids that haven't been in school before. That's a really positive experience. And then I think also just really, as Monica said, connecting with your campus and finding out, kind of having those top 3 questions and getting the information that will help you feel comfortable as you're moving toward getting back into that routine.
And then once school begins, and I'll have Tanya speak more about this because she shared a great idea about decompressing after your child or children come home from school. I know when I was growing up, it was always coming home and we do homework first before anything else. Well, maybe snack first and then homework before anything else. So I'm going to turn it over to Tanya and she can explain more about what she did and ideas for parents and caregivers.
I was like, what did I say? So I had a wonderful professor and he talked about how everybody should have a happy hour. That does not have to include alcohol by any means, but that when you come home, everybody needs to decompress. And so we called it the happy half hour. And basically, as soon as you entered the house, everyone had 30 minutes to do whatever they wanted. And if that's a snack or watch TV or lay on the couch, it doesn't matter. But you don't ask about school, what your homework is, start chores, feed the dog, like none of that. Everybody had 30 minutes to decompress. And I can tell you, it actually worked really well. And it was very helpful for a parent as well, because when I came home, I could go to my room and just decompress and everybody knew 30 minutes. And you could set the egg timer or have a little ding or something, have the snack ready. But I will tell you, when my son started kindergarten, he literally would come home and sleep. He had to take a little nap and then come back at it. And also it reduced a lot of the tension between us as he got older. It wasn't automatically, what homework do you have? When are you going to start it? What's due? What do you need to, so that 30 minutes to just take a breath and relax. And maybe they don't want to talk about it. And then it starts happening organically and naturally, and those conversations will start at dinner or later, but they don't just feel like, oh my gosh, I have to answer all these questions. I just got out of school. I'm so tired. And, Billy sneezed on my notebook today or whatever, I don't know. So it's such a good thing to incorporate, and you could start that now. Like you could just start that timing now. I'm telling you, it's kind of difficult to do, but everybody deserves 30 minutes a day to decompress, from parents
my household
to a 3-year-old.
It is a real thing that there's a neurological component to this called restraint release, right? Our kids have been holding it together all day and they're gonna, right, when they get home. And so creating a space for that, preparing for that, normalizing that is so important. And I think we also talked about last time too, this includes when you have them in the car or sitting at the dinner table. That's not the time to ask, how was your day? It was good. I don't know. I don't remember, right? Asking really specific questions. Who did you eat lunch with? Tell me something fun that happened today, right? Asking concrete questions to learn about their day rather than these really open-ended nebulous questions, and not when you're stuck at the dinner table or in the car, because you're going to get a lot more resistance there.
I agree with you, Tanya. Even a 30-minute nap, which I've been doing, in the middle of the day, does a lot for me. And I used to think, 30 minutes, that's not going to do anything for me. But I do set my timer and it really does help. So I'm glad that your child is sleeping and taking a nap before coming out and addressing the other home issues that come along after school.
Yeah, shame on the person who took away nap time. I'm just saying, we all need a nap time.
That's a great question.
Question in the chat.
There's a question in the chat. My 14-year-old is very concerned about getting COVID since no one is wearing masks. How do we expect our kids to learn when they are worried about their health safety? What happens when Maslow isn't fulfilled for blooms to happen?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that question and for talking about Maslow, one of my
Yes.
favorites.
The hierarchy of
Love
needs.
it. The hierarchy of needs.
Yes.
Food,
Safety.
shelter, safety.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's such a valid concern. And so what is your 14-year-old saying about it? What do they need to feel safe? We kind of talked about this a little bit when we were preparing for this meeting. My son is now 24 and he has a lot of anxiety. And so just going into public causes him a lot of stress. And so what preparation does your 14-year-old need? Do they need sanitizer? Do they want to wear their mask? Do they need a protocol when they come home? What is it that they need to feel okay? And if they don't feel okay, how are they gonna talk to you about that? And then what options do they have if it's too stressful for them to be in an environment next to people not wearing masks? And I think those are great conversations to have. Give them time to think about it. Have them write out like this, my anxiety is going to be so high when this, and this happens, or what that might look like. But it's a great conversation to have, and we're all feeling it. Every single one of us are. So Maslow, yes. And I think that's why we're all struggling, is because our basic needs are not met. We do not have safety. We don't have the capacity to go out and do things or be with each other without that anxiety. So I think it's a beautiful question.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking on that and what Monica said earlier, right? That Bruce Perry said, changing our expectations for what this year might look like, expecting our children to bloom during this year, it's potentially unrealistic, right? And so what does that look like? Blooming might look like them attending school every day. Blooming might look like them being able to talk to you about their worries and fears, rather than these other kind of pre-pandemic thresholds that we had for what blooming looks like. And so really, I think as both parents and educators and providers, and as the children, right, making sure they are communicated with and they understand what their expectations are for the school year and how that is connected back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We cannot reach self-actualization, which is that highest level, unless all these other levels are addressed and consistently addressed. And we just don't jump up and down that pyramid.
And Amy, I think before this started, we were talking about checking in with your school district, because it's changing now that our state is changing the stage. I believe I work in Travis County, so that's stage 4 for us. And they are offering both virtual and in person. So if your 14-year-old isn't feeling that this is the right time for him and his anxiety is high and he doesn't feel safe, then maybe staying, into the virtual world for now until he feels safe might be the best for him and for your family.
And I just want to add one thing. COVID has been taxing for all of us, but I think this is such a beautiful opportunity to really have conversations with your kids and start this process of being real with them, asking them what their threshold is, learning that language, understanding them, having them really check in with their own bodies and what that feels like for them. And then it can be moved into like all other things in life. And so I just really think that this is, although difficult, a wonderful opportunity to start conversations about everything. And it starts with this.
I think, and to piggyback on what everybody else has said, I think being able to have those conversations and then also having conversations with the school staff to ensure that your son or your children feel safe, is that they can control the things that they do. And so showing them that by sharing what do you need to feel safe and to be able to learn and to thrive at school, you can control that. We can't control COVID. We can't control Sally Sue not wearing a mask or so forth. but we can control what we do. And also, if your child wants to wear a mask in school, to also address how he or she might handle the teasing that comes along. So the looks, the stares. I mean, I think we've all maybe experienced it to some level when we go out and we wear a mask. I've gotten eye rolls. But, you know, as an adult, we can just let it roll off our shoulders and not think about it, right? Not let it ruin our day. So I think also having the conversations about how they're going to handle that peer pressure or the comments and so forth at school.
And I think just to touch back on just being really transparent about what your questions are and really prioritizing your children's questions and then empowering them. Where can we get some answers? Let's look at the school website. Let's see what the new protocol says. Let's get an understanding of what it might look like. I think that a lot of our children can find the information more quickly than we can, but really empowering them. Let's see what we can find, and then let's see where we end up, how you feel. I do think that feeling safe is the threshold for this year. We can't learn until we feel safe. And so what do we need in place so that you can feel safe?
I love that idea of involving them in the process. It's such an important piece. If we just do it for them and report back what we found, they're not involved in the process, and it definitely creates disconnect.
That was a great question. Thank you so much. Following that, we'll just discuss. We've had a few questions from parents about separation anxiety. I'm wondering if the panel can talk a little bit about what are the best ways to help kids manage that separation anxiety as they go back to school.
One of the things that stands out to me, and we've kind of touched on this already, is that when our children are dealing with separation anxiety, that can put a lot of pressure on us, a lot of expectation on us, and can lead to our fuse being much shorter, much faster, right? And so really being able to check in with yourself, make a plan, use a lot of validation. A lot of times us as parents, we forget that validation does not equal agreement. If I validate the fear and the struggle that my child is having, I'm agreeing with them that this is awful, and that's not true, right? I can validate someone I disagree with, and using that language, this is hard, I will miss you as well. Being able to like bring transition objects, whether that be a picture or a small object that they can put in their pocket. What that is can depend on the child and where they're going to school, how old they are. Having touch points in the day, you know, if your child has a cell phone, being the one to initiate sending a message, right? Rather than I'm going to wait, right, until they've now blown out of school, or whatever that looks like. I'm sure other people have some great ideas too, so I'm gonna stop talking.
I assume I had separation anxiety as a preschooler and a young grade schooler. So I'm not sure which age we're talking about, but for the younger elementary kiddos, I would even suggest having a scheduled lunch break where you go and have lunch with your kiddo, you know, for maybe the first couple of weeks and see how they are. And then maybe transitioning to once every other day, and then maybe transitioning to once a week, and then transitioning back until they feel comfortable. But I'm just speaking from an elementary age. And then just having, of course, we didn't have cell phones back then, just having the ability for them to have a safe person on campus if they're feeling too anxious. You know, Miss Miller, you know, I'm feeling really anxious right now. Can I please go talk to the counselor or to the nurse? And then, you know, they get to assess, is it appropriate to call a parent or a grandma or someone to help escalate that. So those would be my suggestions. Maybe lunch, and then maybe a safe person identified if the anxiety is, you know, getting where they couldn't manage it.
And I will second and third that all of those things. I think specifically for my son, there was a lot of separation anxiety from the time he was little. And so we always found the person, his person. And his first person was Miss Beth, and he was all of 18 months old. But when I dropped him off, he had to go straight to her. And that's where he cuddled for like a little bit, and then he could go throughout his day. As he got older, it was Miss Barbara, the nurse. And then when he was in high school, it was a social skills counselor that he had permission to go and see whenever he was feeling that anxiety. But there was a lot of really strict routines, and then some things that we just let go. So I just need all of y'all to know that my son went to school in his pajamas like a majority of his life till he was almost 8 or 9. And that was okay, because I gave up that, right? I gave it up. He felt okay. He took his clothes in his backpack. We had the conversation. And when he was ready, he would change, because there are just some fights that you don't need to fight. And so he was in his pajamas a majority of the mornings. And I know you're like, isn't that inappropriate? Well, they were appropriate pajamas. But at that point, we were just happy to get him to school. And so also the conversation was, how are you feeling? Which is a difficult conversation for somebody who's 18 months old or in kindergarten or even in the 3rd grade. And so it was, you know, how does your head, your tummy, your back, your eyes, like all of those things. And there was like a body check, which I think there's some stuff in the toolkit about that. But finding words and then finding that threshold, kind of like what Wendy and Monica were saying. Okay, when I've had enough, what does that feel like in my body? And then I have permission to go sit with Miss Barbara, or bring he had crystals in his backpack that he could rub, just those certain things. And so again, conversations that we want to have and discuss before they get to school or work through as these kind of issues arise.
One of the things we've named too is talking about routine and that consistency. And I think children of all age, we can start now by like driving up to the school, talking through what the first day or the first week is going to look like, you know, sitting in the parking lot and thinking about positive thoughts about school, or sharing funny memories of this thing or that thing, and really kind of creating a little mini exposure to positive situations that are happening on the school campus even before school starts.
And also with doing the routines, you know, if your child has a friend who's going to the same school, maybe doing the routine together, or having other people go and prepare themselves for what the first day of school is going to look like, the drop off, having those conversations, seeing each other, having fun, and then doing that a couple times before the school year begins might help your child with the anxiety that he or she is feeling.
I think practicing routines makes all of us feel better as we're getting ready. It can reduce parent anxiety as well. And so really thinking about what are those difficult parts of the day, and then kind of breaking that down into pieces. So everybody knows what's expected, and everybody knows maybe like, these are the challenging things that happen at this time of day. And so maybe we can laugh if I forgot my socks again instead of another kind of reaction. So just kind of thinking through what are the pieces of this. I think there's a really great chart in the toolkit that looks at different days of the week. What are the things I need to have ready? But again, giving ourselves grace as parents that, okay, beginning of the day is hard. Everybody's stressed. Maybe we just all have to stop and laugh for a minute at our complete exhaustion with each other for a moment, and then we can go on with our day. And then kind of the same with the end of the day, really thinking about what are the things we want to do for our morning selves so that the next day is a little bit easier. I think I always have felt better when I've thought about the challenging things that can happen.
As far as morning routine, this has nothing to do with attachment, separation anxiety. But one thing that I did with my ADHD preschooler is take him to the local, they went to school in Hyde Park. So Hyde Park had a park. And so I would run him and play with him a lot before school started because his teachers, it was just so too overwhelming. He had too much energy. And then my other one that had a little bit of anxiety and depression, we would go and have once or twice a week, have coffee, which yes, I gave my kid a little bit of caffeine to help them with focusing and things like that. So maybe something special in the morning, like you're saying, Elizabeth, would be a great idea, kind of planning that with your kiddo. Well, what would it look like? What's a special treat before school? And it could be something healthy, or it could be something not so healthy, but it's, a treat for every now and again. Yeah.
I love that idea. And I think we can project that forward too into like this concept of intermittent positive reinforcement, right? Casinos use it all the time. Projecting into that first week of school, surprise them with this random trip to the dollar store on the way home, or surprise them with, hey, we're all going to get pizza for dinner tonight. Like, you've done such a great job in this transition. These rewards can be small and not cost anything. Let's go to the park before we go home and start doing chores, right? Again, and connect it back to the thing that you're proud of that they've accomplished. We got out the door this morning with our pajamas and shoes on. We weren't naked kids, right? Like, whatever that looks like, and really reinforcing those positive moments early and often as you make these transitions. Just like the casino, it'll keep them coming back.
And hopefully your employers, we're blessed at Travis County, but hopefully your employers are understanding, and maybe having conversations with your employer. Look, this is going to be hard for my family. I may get a call in the middle of the day, please be understanding. I want to be, proactive and let you know that this may happen. It's a big transition. So maybe talking to your employer too, that, in the middle of the day, I might have to take a break or something like that. But just being proactive with your employer might help too.
Pets are real good positive reinforcements, especially if they can ride with you to drop off the child or pick up the child. There's nothing happier than a kid seeing their dog, happy to see them in the window. Although it causes a lot of slobber, it's still worth it sometimes. So my son knew that if he got up on time, him and the dog would go together at the drop off. But if he was running late, it didn't happen. So, there's so many simple things, like Wendy said, that can be positive reinforcements and great ways to say, good job. Now, Juno gets to ride with you and drop you off. Yay. And just so you know, that happened like all through. Like, my son was like in high school and still loved the dog to go with him. Just never went away.
I have to take my dog to the vet on Friday, and I'm all excited about him riding in the car with me. So I don't think it ends in childhood.
Those are really great questions. I think we only have 20 minutes, right? And we have a list of questions to get through. So I don't know if we want to take another one.
Yes. So we have a question here asking about, how do I help my son's anxiety around the change in school? And she knows that her son is hyperactive. So how do we work with a child who may be anxious about going to school and has ADHD?
I think Monica gave a great example of going to the park and kind of having playtime before. I think the scheduling chart that's in the toolkit is very helpful. Make it very simple. Very simple. Like, what are the top 3 things you want your child to do? Have clothes on, have eaten something, potentially get to school with all the items that they need, like their backpack and lunch. And again, that anxiety is going to look different in every child. So are they lethargic in the morning? Do they have a lot of anxiety and energy in the morning? What does that look like? And then what are some things that you can do to either reduce that burst of energy or really meet the child's needs? And I think, again, we keep going back to talking to the child and trying things. Like you can try something and the child could be like, that didn't work. I mean, we tried a lot of things and my son was like, that was horrible. I never want to do that again. Okay, well, we'll try something else. But having them be a part of that. So I just really want everyone to know that they can really help you resolve these problems. You just have to give them the opportunity to try. And you might try several different things.
I
And
think
then again, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Rebecca.
I was just going to say, and then again, being able to communicate it with the schools and the teachers and providing that safe space. So if your child is really hyperactive, especially during the classroom, of course, we don't want children to be disruptive or taking the attention away from the teacher. So being able to share with the teacher, this is what will work or what we think will work. This is what my child says. And do you have a safe space where he or she can do what he or she needs to get refocused and energized during the school day?
I think the reality is that we're also getting ready in the morning, and especially with our children who have ADHD or ADD or just executive functioning issues, right, which is developmental. We tend to give them, hey, go get on your shoes, go brush your teeth, go eat some breakfast. I'll meet you at the door. Too many steps. I need you to go brush your teeth and then come back to me when you're done. Okay. Now go put your backpack by the door and come back to me when you're done, right? And breaking those steps down instead of giving them a bunch of things and really practicing your own distress tolerance of having to do that, because it will really help make sure each of those tasks are done. And it can, depending on the developmental age of the child, go look at your next task that's on the wall for your checklist. Do that and come back and let me know it's done, right? And so then that way you can kind of keep track of those things being accomplished rather than go do all the things on your checklist and let me know when you're ready. That's not going to work.
I think evening routine is really important too, because you can do a lot of those things. Shoes and backpacks always went in the same spot, like pretty much their entire lives, because I can tell you that finding my daughter's shoes in the morning was always a nightmare. So it was like, they go right here. So having a nighttime routine, I think, is really important as well to reduce what everybody has to do or running around looking for things in the morning, especially a child who's kind of intense. And so I think that those nighttime routines are also extremely important, and making it fun. Because I know we're all stressed in the morning. So what can we do that's fun? And my son would pick like his favorite song, and he would have to be like, at least have his stuff together, not dressed, but his stuff together by the time the song was over. So teeth, all your stuff out the door. So make it fun. Make it fun for yourself.
Yeah, and I think it encourages interaction with and relationship building with your child. So I remember when I was growing up, um, my mom would help me pick out my clothes, and I would go help out pick out her clothes for the next day, and we would make our lunches together. So the things that as a parent you may say, I have to do X, Y, and Z before tomorrow morning. Think about what you can involve your child in to spend more time with your child and also teach him or her the skills that are going to be needed as he or she grows up, and they have a sense of um, accomplishment, and also contributing to their own day and to the family.
Just real quick, before we move on to the next question. So Dr. Scott Sells has the Family Trauma Institute. I put it in the link, and he has a free webinar that I attended, and it's how the anxious parent makes the anxious child. So we want to make sure that we are, calm, and we are not showing the anxiety, and we are modeling the calmness, because a lot of times our anxious children are anxious because we're anxious as parents. So I just put that in the link if you guys are interested in that free webinar.
Thank you. That's a great resource.
Vanessa, I saw a question that was asked during registration that deals with racial anxiety for biracial children, and I thought because we are about 14 minutes in until the end, maybe we can address that, and if the person is present, um, I don't know if this is racial anxiety because of COVID and the anti-Asian backlash that is happening, or if it's just in general being a biracial child.
Yes, and that question was, how do we address racial anxiety for biracial children?
So I have my two adult sons, 25 and 21, are biracial, Hispanic and Black. So they are actually triculture because they have most of their friends are Caucasian, and it's interesting how a lot of our kids don't even, I just have to be honest, they don't even see the difference. Like I try to have these racial conversations with them, and it's almost like we're all people, like I don't feel the tension. And so, but it's important, to communicate those things. We don't watch the news. We watch very little TV. I protected them as a kid by not having a TV. But so to answer that question, it's an important question, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's great to educate. Look, this is what's going on. How can I support you? And going back to them and asking them, I really care about you, and what can I do to support you? Is this an issue for you? But not projecting the fear factor that's in our culture and society right now, because some of them they're not afraid, and it's not even in their thinking, or it's not even part of their day-to-day. So my answer is find out where your child is with the issues and then address it from there and have honest conversations. But again, not to project the anxiety that maybe we may have. So I hope that's helpful. And if anybody wants to talk to it after this, I can give you my contact information too.
Thank you, Monica. So I am not biracial, but I am adopted. A trans Atlantic adoption. So my family is white, and I vividly remember being called Chinese eyes when I was a young child and going home and crying about it because I'm not Chinese, I'm Korean. And so my parents bought a book called Chinese Eyes about a Korean born adoptee, and they read it to me and explained to me. But they also were very open about in my lifetime, unfortunately, I will meet people who are not accepting of people. Um, and that it was really up to me to know who I am and to be able to talk to them when I experience racism. To be able to feel anxious and for them to be supportive. And so I think as if your children are talking about the anxiety of being biracial or multiracial, to hold that space for them and allow them to share what their thoughts and fears and emotions are. And to process that. And if you don't know the answers, and oftentimes my parents didn't know the answers, they would go seek help for that to be able to address what my questions were. But also to really, they taught me to love myself, that it didn't matter that I didn't look like them, that who I was very important.
I think another really important aspect of this as well is when your children are talking with you, particularly around big topics and issues like racial inequality, even the concept of like feeling safe in COVID, is really asking them, are you looking to vent? Are you looking to connect? Are you looking for me to problem solve with you? Often as parents, we jump immediately into trying to fix these really big problems for them. And they might need that, right? These are really huge issues that even us as adults don't really have a handle on how to fix. But we also often miss the connection moments these conversations can bring and trying to jump to that. So just looking at Joshua's kind of statement of really taking that moment to validate and acknowledge this is hard, and this is hard for me as an adult. I can't imagine what it's like for you as a child. What are some things that help you feel safe? What are some things, who are the safe people, as Fred Rogers would say, and really helping them talk with them about like, what is it that they're looking for when they're talking with you about these things? Because we will immediately jump to problem solving, every single one of us. And that might not be what they need.
And I just want to piggyback on a couple of things. And then reading Joshua's comment, I was like, okay, that is definitely some clarity. And for me, the first thing that I thought was the media, the social media, just all of it, all the time, 24/7. And so when Monica said, I protected my kids by not having a TV, I cannot tell you how many locks and codes we put on the TV, just because, yes, I had to, for my son, especially with 9/11, and then, I mean, just our generation of children, our children, some of them who are now young adults, have been through a lot. There's been so much televised, there's been so much on the news and social media, and so it's so hard for them to, number one, take it all in, and then number two, some of those images are just, you can't erase them. And so I just want to encourage everyone, for parents as well and adults, to turn that off and take a breath, and then do exactly what Wendy was talking about and what Monica was talking about. We've got to kind of shut that down, I think, and then really talk about how it makes us feel and what kind of reality that is for our kids, if they really are feeling that, especially right now, because there's just too much information and visuals and negativity that's happening. And so I would just really encourage you, especially with the George Floyd images and the attacks on the Asian culture, we just need to be really aware about what our kids are watching and encompassing and what we're watching. So I know it's hard because we all have phones and computers and TVs, but I would just really encourage everybody to kind of rein that in a little bit, and then use what Monica and Wendy talked about.
I'm seeing Joshua's statement that this was a social studies discussion within the school, and I think this is a great, a really challenging point, and a really great part of this discussion is that I think a lot of people in this world are really well-intentioned with trying to have this conversation early and often. And this would be a really great opportunity to tell your kid, like, man, the Papa Bear in me is coming out, and I want to tell that teacher they did not create a safe environment for you. I don't know if that's how you felt, Joshua, but I did for your child, right? And so, is that what you need from me? How could we have a conversation about, talking with this teacher or talking with your school about what helps you feel safe during these kinds of conversations? And again, not necessarily jumping to that fixing it or problem solving or going to the rescue, even though I felt it and I wanted to do it for you. I wanted to rescue you from it. And it's a great opportunity to help them learn how to advocate for themselves. And that also might be well above where they're at. I'm seeing 5th grade. That's probably well above where they're at, but we don't want to make that assumption. What do you need to feel safe when you are having big conversations at school? Because they're going to come up.
I have my 10-year-old nephew, and I know we need to get to another question, but my 10-year-old nephew is here with me. And what I've taught him, he's my son too. What I've taught him is giving him the power, empowering him to say, that's a personal opinion, and I choose not to discuss that. And just giving him the power. You don't have to reply. You don't have to engage. You have the power to have the conversations you want to have. And I think that will help even as an adult, that's a personal choice, and I choose not to discuss that. I'm having to say that about the vaccination every day. So, just encouraging your 5th grader, my son is going to be in the 5th grade too, and just empowering him. There are some conversations that are not up for debate, and you don't have to explain yourself. You can just teach your kiddo to say, it's a personal conversation that I choose not to have right now, and teaching them, how to empower them and giving them the power to discuss what they want and to hold off what they, things that they don't want to talk about.
Yeah, those are great points, Monica. And I will also say, not only empowering them to not have the discussion, but also I think to remember that we don't speak for every member of our ethnicity. And our experiences are very different, even within our own cultures and ethnicities too. And yes, I would think being able to have a conversation with the school, and maybe Elizabeth could give a little bit more because she is a principal and has more insight to uh, how a school might be able to address your experience.
Well, I just want to thank you, Joa, for bringing that up. We need to be talking about this, and we need to be, well, one, I want to acknowledge how wonderful it is that your child told you this happened, because that's a hard conversation to have with your parent who there's so many things happening in that situation. So how wonderful that your child brought it to you. And I think that these are the really important conversations that need to take place with educators, with teachers, with administrators. It's really important to make sure that the school culture is supportive of every member of the community. And it's really important to make sure that every educator within that school is holding to the same standard. And so I think it's always important to make sure, I'd like to check this with one. First, I want to start the conversation with the person in the classroom where this happened. And I want to understand, and I want you to understand what my child took from this conversation. And then I think, it's very reasonable to continue that conversation with the administration if you are concerned that there's a gap here between people's understanding and practice. So that is not unreasonable. And the only way that we get better at all of this is if we talk about it. So thank you so much for bringing it up tonight.
And perhaps this may be a different discussion topic for later on, especially because now with our legislation changing what teachers can teach about race and culture and ethnicity. And so I think that will have some consequences or impact on our children and us as well as adults.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for your comments, and thank you, panelists, for this very important discussion. We have about a minute left. I'd like to really get one more question in there, and it's one that asks, how can parents and families support each other through this time? How can they build up the support to be able to help manage as a collective, all the stressors that are going on right now?
Well, I definitely want to give a shout out to our group that's going to be starting August 24th. We are really excited, and I think connecting with other parents, there is not much that is as powerful as connecting with others, hearing their stories, realizing that we're all experiencing the same 7:30 meltdown together collectively as a society. And that's just it's a good feeling. Getting tips and support from others is incredibly important and a great step in taking care of yourself. So
I couldn't agree more. The program that I work with is a primary group-based program, and while we definitely have individual and family work as part of that, group is where that work really happens, and so it's incredibly powerful as a modality. And whether you build that as a tribe and you guys do your weekly meeting, or you have something more formal like a support group, it's incredibly valuable.
Be
I was
gentle with
gonna
yourself. I'm
piggy-
sorry. Go ahead, Monica.
No. I was just gonna piggyback on what Wendy said. Even if there's like not an official support group, just getting one or two or three, two or three parents together and just saying, hey, would you like to have a cup of coffee, and just having a conversation. And then from there, like organically, it will come, that you support each other and just talk about what's important and what's helpful. I know we did that. Somebody actually invited me, and then we would take a walk after school started, things like that, which I know may not be an option, but just reaching out to the parents that or that might be around that you feel comfortable asking. And you may want to do that because back to school nights are going to come pretty soon, and so just looking out for those people that you might connect with.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming to this discussion, sharing your questions. And thank you so much to Rebecca, to Elizabeth, Tanya, Monica, Wendy, for your insights. They have been so valuable and the discussion has been wonderful. Before we go, just want to share that NAMI Central Texas has a variety of child and youth programs, and that you can go to NAMICentralTexas.org, correct me if I have that wrong, and see that all of the support groups and the offerings that they have. They also have many more videos that are similar to the ones that we discussed in the beginning of this panel.
And I also want to add, we do also offer family-to-family support groups as well for parents who have a loved one with a mental health condition as well.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Rebecca, do we know when the next NAMI Basics live program is going to happen?
No, but we are doing a wait list, so we
Okay,
want to
cool.
see what the need is. And so if you're interested, you just fill out your information to be placed on a wait list.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Elizabeth spoke about the importance of having a support network. We are going to be relaunching our parent support group, Real Talk for Parents, on Tuesday, August 24th. It'll be a weekly group that will meet from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. We have information here about how to sign up. And Elizabeth, who's one of the co-leaders, will stay on after the panel presentation on the Zoom link to talk to anyone who'd like to ask questions or find out more about this group. Again, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I uploaded the back to school toolkit within the chat, but I will also email it to everyone who enrolled, and we'll also post it on social media so that we can have it available to everyone, and you can let everybody know that this toolkit will be available for downloading. And if you have a chance, please complete our feedback survey. We'd love to know how we can have more of these panels and what to improve. But thank you again. Sharing here. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. Yes. Have a great evening.